So I think the recording just started. We also encourage you to post any questions that you have as you are listening to the presentation so that we can address as many of the questions at the end of the presentation. Before I introduce the panel for today's webinar, let me first tell you a little bit about FA Solutions and Education Compliance Management, which is also known as ECM. As you can see, we have over 40 years where we have been customizing solutions for over 400 financial aid and bursar offices. Our staff is made up of only experienced financial aid professionals that are passionate about your institution and your students' success. So let's meet our awesome speakers for today. Let's start off. We first have Rachel Gordon. She is the Chief Operating Officer at ECM, and she was recently named to the Board of Directors for the Association for the Advancement of the College Admissions Professions, or ACAP. She's a highly experienced enrollment management and financial aid professional with over 20 years of experience in the creation of financial aid process flows, full cycle accreditation, implementation of automated systems, and staff training and development. We also have Stacy Salinas. She's the Vice President of Financial Aid and Student Accounts at Be On Air Network, M&S Media Incorporated. She brings over 20 years of dedicated service and expertise to the field of financial aid. Her career has spanned roles from enrollment management to financial aid. She has consistently delivered stellar results during compliance audits. Stacy has held the president position for the New Jersey Association of Financial Aid Administrators and has served on various state, national, and nonprofit associations. Let's meet Jennifer Christensen. She serves as the Executive Director for ACAP and Hertzing University. She is a driven leader with a dynamic career that's spanning over 20 years. She has built around transforming lives through education. She's a passionate advocate for developing and recognizing admission professionals with a strong understanding of their profound impact on meeting the needs of students, families, communities, and institutions. Let's meet Francisco Galindo. He is the AVP of Public Relations and Stakeholder Engagement for Lincoln Tech. Frank's career at Lincoln Tech started in 2002. He became the high school marketing manager before joining the Compliance and Regulatory Department as the Director of Marketing Compliance. He advocates for continued access to career and technical education and training. We have Sarah Holmes. Sarah is the Senior Account Executive and Admissions Trainer at Advanced 360 Education. She has more than 12 years experience as a former Executive Director of Admissions and Marketing with one of the highest conversion rates in the industry. She uses her sell techniques and expertise to help schools grow their population. She's been consulting with vocational schools for the past 7 years, and with Advanced 360 Education, she shows schools that the power of more enrollments is the perfect mix of digital marketing and admissions. And last but not least, we have Diana Hutchinson. She is the Vice President of Enrollment Operations at Midwest Technical Institute and Delta Technical College, where she oversees the strategic planning, vision, and implementation of enrollment initiatives. She's got over 15 years of experience in higher education. She demonstrates her ability to build and develop a dynamic team of enrollment leaders. She brings knowledge and expertise in admissions, student recruitment, high school and traditional, financial aid, student accounts, and data-driven enrollment management. So this is your entire panel that will be presenting today. With that, I will turn it over to them. Again, this is recorded. Please remember, use the chat, put your questions in there, and enjoy the presentation.
Thanks, Vanessa. Great introductions. So there has been a significant increase in requests for cross-functional training as it pertains to enrollment management and student experiences. So here are some of the key takeaways we're looking forward to sharing today. Oh, I don't see your screen anymore, Vanessa.
Apologize, I just did it.
No worries. So,
Okay.
like I said, so cross-functional strategies, enhancing student engagement and enrollment. The students are our customers, right? So we want to make sure we enhance how they can work with us and what that looks like. So important is breaking down silos and innovational approaches for streamlined enrollment management. We need to work all as one because we all have the same goal in mind, right? And that's to better the student and make them have a great journey with us. Um, and then engagement synergy. Okay. So how can we do that? We know we hear a lot about what's going on with burnout or, people working a lot. Let's engage together. Let's be positive so we have synergies. Next slide, I'm going to hand it over to Jen, my admissions bestie.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. All right, you hit it on the head when you said that we have been getting so many requests for cross-functional training, which is great because it takes us out of our silos and helps us to connect with peers and learn from one another. So as this slide says, it's helping us to understand each other, our roles, because we're all one team. So this is really all about culture. It's all about we all win or we all lose. How can we hold each other accountable, understand our roles and what we need to contribute to the success of our students? So let's go to the next slide. What I found really enlightening when I started working with some of my besties here, like Sarah in marketing and Rachel in financial aid, we threw this out. This comes from some admissions training. And we said, let's start with this and let's really look at our various roles and responsibilities. And we didn't have to really change a thing on this slide when we looked at what we all have in common. And this is really the foundation of what we do. So real quick, I'll highlight some of these things, right? We all need to build rapport. We need to understand students' current and desired situations. What are they basing their decisions on? Not just their enrollment decision, but as they continue through the program, whether they're going to stay in the program. And how can we all provide relevant solutions? Making sure students are well informed from the beginning to the end and that the expectations are real. Clear direction, deadlines, and accountability. Making sure there's consistent readiness and preparation for every step that student's going to take so that we're not over-promising and under-delivering. And of course, keeping students engaged to foster, insert your institution. And what that really means by keeping student engaged is not just the enrollment, but it's the retention and it's the referrals. So you can never get away from an admissions person talking and not mentioning referrals. So let's go to the next slide. So this really speaks to when we looked at, what do we build this cross-functional training on? These were 4 of the key objectives that we had. And again, these are significant in every interaction with our students. A, building relationships. B, understanding, identifying, and overcoming concerns and objections. C, compliance and transparency. And finally, setting deadlines and holding students accountable. So these were some things that we started with as we built some training through ACAP. And the elements you see here are really the competencies, again, across the board. We're building out these competencies, how to build rapport, effective questions, listening, identifying needs, creating value, overcoming concerns, inspiring students, and gaining commitments. So this is really, the meat and potatoes of some of the things that we are striving to create this culture, and it all starts with the vision. So I'm going to put a little plug in here for a book that I just read, and it's called The Unreasonable Hospitality, The Power of Giving People More Than What They Expect. And so that vision is, when we do these cross-functional trainings, it really is starting with, let's talk about our common vision. And if we can latch on to something and commit to a vision, it's going to help our students externally and internally if we're all giving each other and giving our students more than what we need. And that, if you think about an experience that you've had where you've been delivered more than what you expected, that's the competition. That's your students' competition. The best experiences that they have had is the competition. It's not what other schools are doing, it's what their best experiences are. So with that, I'm going to pull in my financial aid bestie and let her talk a little bit more about the relationships that we've built and how we've helped to lead our teams in cross-functional training.
Absolutely. I think this is such an important topic. And if I might say timely this year, as we've had everything in financial aid change, late FAFSA releases, an enormous amount of stress and burnout and transitions going on in our financial aid office, we need to communicate that forwards. And this is where enrollment management comes into play. The people in our admissions office, they need to know what we're going through. They need to understand the why. Why are award letters late? Why is the verbiage changing? Why did everything on our website change this year? How should I be speaking as an admissions officer? What are the new acronyms? There's no EFC, there's an SAI. Where do they go to fill out a FAFSA? Really going through all of that detail with them so that they know. Just baseline information. We have contributors now. Timelines have changed. Making sure there's collaborative communication. We are a team here. It is not the admissions office and the financial aid office. It is enrollment management. And we work together as one team to unify bringing in our classes. Whether you have starts every week or once a term, you're doing it together. And it is so important. And that is something that I know myself and Jen have been doing a ton of speaking on, and Jen and Sarah as well, and Diana. And we did a presentation at CQ about this because we really do find it important. One thing I took away from that session was when people said, wow, you're a nice financial aid person. I thought, okay, we need to change that image because all of us are. We want to make sure that you know we have open doors in financial aid. We are here to collaborate and communicate. And it really is important that we work together. And we're going to get into some more of the details of this as we go further into this presentation.
And Rachel, I would add, not only are you nice, but you're flowery. And so, you know, I talked about all the things we have in common, but we also have a lot of differences. And it's really fun to meet a flowery financial aid person.
I take that well. Thank you. So one thing about financial aid, it's so many people believe that we are a siloed office, that we kind of work onto ourselves. We're looking at a FAFSA, or we're filling out a phys app, or doing things that have lots of acronyms that nobody knows what it is. But in reality, financial aid is interdependent on almost every office in your school, college, or university. Whether we are consuming your data for looking up academic progress, admission statuses, career outcomes, or your office is using our data in marketing or other areas, financial aid is one of the only places where you are going to see that every single office plays an impact on us in some way, shape, or form. And with that, it is an enormously collaborative relationship. And it's time for us to break down the silos between us and every other office and start redefining the way that we are looking at our financial aid offices and the enrollment cycles in our universities. I have been saying this since the beginning of my career, and I actually saw in the attendees someone who was one of the first staff members in my first directorship, so I'm probably taking him very far back with this. I have been saying forever, admissions is the window and financial aid is the door. I say this so often that they've added it to my bio. I really believe no matter how much a student wants to come to a school, whether they want to become a cosmetologist or a teacher, if they can't afford it or come up with a way to finance it, they're not going to attend. And this is one of the main reasons that we need to work together and come in sync within our different departments. Because again, admissions is the window, but financial aid truly is the door to your school. Admissions intertwines with financial aid in so many ways. Chad, who I presented with at CQ in a different session, gave me this wonderful statistic, and it's something that I've also followed as well when I had my own aid offices. At ATA College, by changing their admissions process to include financial aid early and often, their start rates improved by 50% from 2022 to 2023. Many schools look at admissions and financial aid. Financial aid comes in when a student is accepted or an applicant. I propose we start redefining that and looking at it in the inquiry phase. To share educational information with students, parents, spouses, families, let them know how to apply, what the application process is, and if they have a complicated family situation, we are here to help them and support them. We have been in a great year of transition in financial aid. Our forms don't work, websites come up and down, everything is changing. Everybody who's in financial aid on this call really feels deeply what I'm saying because I know my staff does. COD's been up and down all day today. But if we bring the process earlier, then we can start the conversations sooner. And for our most at-risk populations, that is enormously important. And with that, I propose redefining the enrollment management cycle. Let's redefine it. So often when we think of enrollment management, we look at it as admissions and financial aid, and then it ends. Does it really? The truth is our students are enrolling every term, every start, every cohort. Therefore, we're managing their enrollment throughout their life cycle. It starts at admissions, inquiry, applicant, acceptance. Now they're a seated student. So we're working on their enrollment through retention. We want to keep them there. We want to make sure they stay engaged and connected to our institution. We do that through our academics, when we're checking our academic progress, when they're learning and growing in their chosen fields, all the way through to graduation. When we look at it from a financial aid perspective now, we're helping them with repayment plans. We're making sure that everything is in order. They are still our student after they graduate. And when they are an alumni, and I have said this before, they become our greatest admissions officers. They are out there talking about their schools. The relationship that they created for this entire cycle carries with them for their lives, whether they're wearing a shirt or they're just talking about it. And then the cycle continues again with those they've spoken to about your school. So when we're talking about enrollment management, let's bring to the table, instead of that being admissions and financial aid, start referring to it as the entire student life cycle, because we truly are re-enrolling that student every single time and managing those expectations and their forever relationship with our institutions.
I couldn't agree with you more, Rachel. And Jen actually touched on some of these points earlier on. But one of the things that we definitely want to drive home is just really getting to know the student and, kind of putting at the forefront the student experience throughout that entire life cycle. So introducing like the admission student flow and that front end piece, identifying, what's important to them, why is it important to them, and really understanding the population and the students that are sitting in front of you. One thing that we propose and really try to drive home early on, which is something Rachel just kind of hit on, is getting the parents involved earlier on in the process, as well as influencers. They may not necessarily be directly related to the financial aid piece, but those influencers, teachers, guidance counselors, grandparents, spouses, whoever that may be, to help guide and motivate these students to further their education, to stay in school, to finish, to really drive to that outcome, which is graduation, getting placed out in the schools. And if we can get these influencers and parents, brought to the forefront earlier on in the process, then that really just kind of helps out every department overall. It helps your retention with students. It helps your academics with students. It helps the placement folks with getting students placed out into their careers. Obviously, financial aid, student accounts, and admissions. But the more influencers you have, the more parents you have involved earlier on and throughout the entire process while they're here in school, the better. And, be specific, purposeful, set realistic expectations, like Jen mentioned earlier, have actionable items. I always like to talk to our reps and our leaders to kind of create to-dos for students. What is it that we want them to do? When do they need to do that by? And then why is it that it needs to get done? Create value. It helps kind of create urgency, and it's just more productive and more effective for a follow-up. And then as far as these are some additional tips that I feel are most important as we start to drive home the student experience and the student life cycle overall. These are a handful of the tips, but one thing that kind of leads back into what Rachel had mentioned is warm handoffs from department to department. So whether that is from admissions to financial aid, or financial aid to admissions, or to student accounts, or to academics, or to campus leadership, warm handoffs so that your students aren't necessarily kind of having to go into a new department, introducing themselves alone. And so having those warm introductions for the students actually helps them feel more at peace and obviously have a better experience overall. Everyone must be bought in to believe that we're a student-centric culture and that our schools and our organizations are student-centric, and identify those individuals that maybe aren't so much and work with them to try to help them, put that student experience at the forefront. Always keeping the student's experience at the forefront with processes as you kind of redesign, redevelop processes, procedures, decisions that we make as organizations, so that we can, again, take pride in their success in the end. And one of the big things that we really try to drive home is we're one big unit, one organization, and one team mentality, breaking down these silos, conducting interdepartmental joint trainings, whether it be with professional development, whether it be interdepartmental on how these things translate. And of course, there might be breakouts individual to specific departments that may be more specifically related to them. But the more uniform we are as an organization, as a school, as a company, we obviously can ensure that these students are truly and genuinely getting the best experience possible. And now I'll turn it over to Stacy.
Thank you, Diana. First, I wanna just mention that kudos to you all in this given time. In 20 plus years in this industry, as Rachel stated earlier, and some of the other panelists have mentioned, this by far has been the most challenging year ever. Again, that's where educating our students, our families come into play. The quote here states, once a student withdraws from the school, more than 50% never return. Of the students that do return, an estimated 33% will graduate. We all know the importance of our graduation rates and how they're publicized and the like. So what can we do to educate our students and our families in a clear, concise manner of any change in priority deadline dates, any changes in process flows? For instance, the new setup with the new FAFSA and how to proceed with filing that application, etc. As we move on to the next slide, we're going to talk about the importance of communicating deadlines, academics, financial aid deadlines, and pre-warnings. I always like to say that clear communication channels are key. You want to ensure that you're using multiple channels, whether it's emails, text, institutional apps, to reach the students. Again, it's getting in front of them as early as you possibly can. Ensure that all communications are sent from a recognizable and consistent source. And again, this goes across the board for the entire campus, right? The entire college community. As much as we're educating our students and our families to help with a better result in our retention, all stakeholders hold a certain, piece of it as well to help educate these students as well. We want to make sure we're sending detailed instructions, step-by-step guides for completing any necessary tasks or forms, include FAQs and troubleshooting tips to address common issues. What are students experiencing when completing this new 24-25 FAFSA? What are those barriers, right? So how could we break down those barriers to get them to complete that FAFSA so that they can proceed and persist to the next year? Tailor messages based on the individual student deadlines and needs, and the pre-warning system. Implement a system that flags students who are nearing their deadlines or missing required documents. Send those notifications if there are any potential issues with their financial aid status or application. Use interactive tools, digital tools like calendars, checklists that students can integrate with, and create resources such as webinars, workshops, written guides that explain the financial aid process. Again, I've said I've been in this business 22 years. I can't say that there's not one webinar, one workshop, one community building that I go to that I don't walk away learning something new. So just imagine what the college campus, stakeholders, students, and families feel like as well.
Thank you. So far, so good. Loving this information sharing, all these different perspectives. Now we're going to jump into trust building versus trust busting. This was my forte. I've been, like I said, in the sector working for Lincoln Tech for 23 years. 10 of those years spent in the compliance and regulatory field. And trust building it behooves your students, it behooves your institution, and it's just very important as this falls into the realm of compliance. So I'm going to tap into my expertise in those 10 years working in compliance to share some information with you all. Your schools work very hard to ensure that every department, they should work hard to ensure that every department is trained on how to properly engage with potential students. But remember, how information is shared by every representative in your institution. When you compliance, you might think of its admissions. No, compliance is everyone. Financial aid, peer services, education, admissions, and how information is shared by these individuals is just as important as the information itself. The how can either build trust with potential students or break it. So providing information that is not factual, avoiding directly answering questions because you're too proud to say, I'm not sure, let me get back to you, or improvising same reason can dictate trust that's already been built or create roadblocks to building trust. So we're getting to transparency and compliance in communication. Next slide, please, Vanessa. So here, stating facts, using credible sources, setting realistic expectations, surrounding the training programs at your school, and sharing data that reflect the current labor market trends in your specific region. That's important. Messages must be compelling to connect with your audience, and they need to see themselves at your school, in your program. Remember that compelling stories allow potential students to relate to peers' experiences. Coming from a marketing background at Lincoln, I understood what we were doing to try and communicate with our students to get those messages across, right? To get them excited about the career, to get them excited about the training, excited about the school, and come in and train for that career field, right? So I got that. And then after 9 years doing that, 10 years in compliance, I was like, okay, that's what we want to say, but how do we say it? How do we say it in a compliant manner? So these stories are best told, I found, by graduates and employers, because it allows incoming students to see themselves in school and in their career field. So making sure that communication is transparent and compliant. It can be done, it can be compelling, and it can be done in a manner that is not misrepresentative or misleading. So next we'll talk about compliance, as I mentioned before, being an entire school requirement. Again, throughout my 20 plus years in career and technical education, I've come to understand how critical it is that every department member comprehends his or her role in the admissions process, right, in enrollment management, and the need to remain compliant while conveying to students the benefits of your education and training programs. So again, we're all passionate about the work that we do, and at times, and I've heard it, they may lead to individuals unintentionally making statements that, although seemingly benign to them, could be potentially perceived as misleading. So as I listen to mystery shops, for example, and the mystery shop recordings for over a 10-year period in my role as director of marketing compliance, I can usually tell as a potential student is going through a tour with an admissions representative, where an instructor or an FA representative or a career services team member happens to be around while the tour is taking place, and they get sucked into the conversation, right? They unexpectedly become a part of the conversation with the potential student. And it's in these moments that they have to remember policy, right? Transparency, compliance, all of those things as it relates to the proper way to share information pertaining to outcomes, tuition, fees, programs, basically everything that has to do with your school. So our campuses depend on every team member to be on the same page. And we'll jump into some topics now that can come up within those conversations between a potential student and admissions, between a potential student and admissions, and financial aid or career services, or a member of your staff or faculty who happen to be walking the halls during a tour. So when it comes to the topics of conversation, when building a rapport with students, there are certain topics that stand out because they are critical to helping students make informed decisions about which school to attend, which program they want to pursue, what career field they want to pursue, and program training that they need for that. So it's for this reason that conversations surrounding these topics are always top of mind for regulators. Again, going into that compliance mindset here. So we'll dive in quickly and go down the list of items here. Starting with accreditation, I think it's reasonable to expect everyone at your campus to have a basic understanding of what accreditation means to your institution and to your students in terms of at least quality of instruction and financial aid accessibility. So make it a point to ensure everyone understands who your accreditor is and what it means for your institution to be accredited, and programs as well if you have programmatic accreditation. Never promise anyone that their credits will transfer. It's always up to the receiving institution to make that determination. This one seems like a no-brainer, but you'd be surprised how easily representatives get tripped up. One of the things that I was asked to do is put together a compliance training module. We have online training. I'm sure some of you have learning softwares, learning platforms at your institutions where various department members can go in to get training and information, refreshers on career services, financial aid, education, delivery, things of that nature. So putting a module like that and making that available to everyone, I think is very important. Your graduation and placement rates should be made publicly available so individuals can make informed decisions about their continuing education. And this goes back to our discussion about transparency, right? So every department member should know where this information resides so they can point people in the right direction. They don't have to shoot from the hip, take guesses, just let everyone know where that information can be found. When it comes to employment projections, entry-level salary information, using credible sources is paramount for myself and for our team. CareerOneStop.org, onetonline.org, bls.gov, those are all credible sources. But remember, even though those are credible sources, there are potential pitfalls. So remember, it's not just about the data you use, but how you present it to potential students. With regards to tuition and fees, it should be readily accessible and presented as is. In other words, don't tell applicants that tuition could be as low as $5,000 after their financial aid awards. That violates two rules. One, you're misrepresenting the cost of the program, and two, you're implying ease of eligibility for financial aid. And on that note, all applicants should understand that financial aid is available to those who qualify, and never guarantee that someone will be certified, licensed either during or upon completion of their program of study, even if it's a requirement for graduation. I know faculty and staff get very, again, emotional and passionate about what they're preparing their students for, but remember that it's up to the student to pass those tests and exams to become certified or licensed. And the last item that I'll go through on this list is pressure tactics. This should go without saying. Pressure tactics and unethical behavior are unacceptable always. So provide applicants with all the information they need, answer their questions, and give them as much time as they need to think about it. With that, we'll go into some best practices to help everyone stay on point, stay on message. So how do you ensure that everyone understands and follows policy and procedures? Ensure all employees are trained before they interact with students. It's very critical. Require at least an annual refresher to keep the rules top of mind. The module that I mentioned before that I put together is required for everyone first coming into the company before interacting with students, and then required training and documentation that training has taken place at least once every year. Enforce proper practices by making it a point to review them during regular department meetings. Again, so for every member, it could be career services, financial aid, admissions, education. And make sure everyone is speaking the same language by sitting in or listening in on interactions with potential students. Conducting third-party mystery shops is another way to make sure your most seasoned representatives and your new hires are abiding by the rules that are meant to help students and protect the organization. And finally, coach your representatives. Provide feedback to help them understand where they're strong and where they need to improve. Lead by example and demonstrate that building trust and remaining transparent and compliant will help contribute to a unified strategy to help shatter silos. Going back to the financial aid is interdependent with all other offices. I can't stress how important it is to ensure that financial aid information and the important critical that it is to getting folks into the door and Rich said it best, financial aid is the door, is the window. It's important to make sure that we relay important and critical information accurately for financial aid. One last thing that I'll share is that we used to use in admissions a financial aid information video, and we stopped doing that a long time ago because the potential liability surrounding outdated information from a video that we put together ourselves, it was disastrous. We owned the messaging, so we were putting ourselves out there, and instead decided to turn to studentaid.gov, for example, as a resource to provide potential students and applicants with current and accurate information. They have wonderful videos out there, a lot of useful information that is timely, and we like to share that with people about FAFSA and applying for Title IV. So that is my spiel on compliance and making sure that everyone in your organization remains transparent, compliant, and compelling. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Rachel.
Effective communication is so essential. Can we go back one slide? Thank you so much. And so is the positive ways that we can communicate things. It is so easy to provide a message, but the way that we say it is how it's going to be received. Words matter, whether we're reading a regulation, a CFR, or just communicating forwards. Even the most complex messaging we can say in a positive way. Back when I had my own aid office, I used to have what we called the no-no list, which was actually words that I said, we're not going to say. We're going to say it this way instead. So that when we're conveying forwards, when we're speaking with students or our colleagues, or now myself at a third-party servicer working with schools, there's always a positive way to communicate a message. Maybe it's about outcomes. Possibly not everyone is passing their tests in the end to go into a specific field, but then we need to focus on the rigor of our programs and how hard we're working to get our students through them, and saying that we only pass this many to go to that next level because we're making sure everyone's going in the right field. And if not, this many percentage of students are moving to another major and successfully graduating. We're communicating the message, giving the data, and ensuring that we're giving positive language, and whether it's in the written or verbal format. Another thing I always talk about is avoiding jargon. It is so easy, especially in financial aid. I did it earlier, saying COD is down, or there's an SAI that replaced an EFC, or we're talking about all different acronyms. Nobody knows what we're talking about. And even if they do, their brain is so tired from the whole day that they would like it if you spoke in words. So let's make sure when we're communicating that we're actually communicating in a language that people want to receive. Let's remove the jargon from our conversation, most especially when we're talking to students and parents. Most of them, even if they've learned a little bit about this, might not truly know what all of that means. Let's make sure that we're making a comfortable and welcoming environment when we're speaking to either our colleagues, our students, or external constituents. Aligning messages is very important. Jen and I have spoken about this in the past, that when I used to have a financial aid office, I had my admissions people read my award letters to make sure that our verbiage was consistent across the board, that we were having the same message, the same tone, the same feel. Jen says I'm flowery. I don't think I am. I think I'm boring and regulatory, but we can move on from that. And it's really important to work interdependently. And that's a great way to do it when you're collaborative and saying, hey, I wrote this. Can you read it and tell me how you would receive this? And can you edit it and make it more receivable? Because I know I write boring. Department of Ed loves what I write, I assure you, but I don't know if parents and students will. And that's when you get to work together. And I think it's essential for us to continue to do that on a go forward.
So I'm going to tie
Yeah.
this particular
Mhm.
slide with the breaking down the silos. Of course, having and being at a workplace and being in a great place to work, you have to have a strong foundation of trust. And I think that absolutely starts at the top. And if there is not a solid foundation of trust, it definitely tugs at the departments and how you kind of create the silos, and it's every man against themselves. So creating that, fostering that type of environment and having that trust is huge. And if not, so many pillars can be broken down or eroded throughout the organization, throughout the school. So foster an environment of open dialogue. Psychological safety is critical, where people feel like they can safely share ideas, share thoughts, creating unity. It's so important, again, coming and starting at the top, and that filters into the departments individually. If you find this area is an opportunity for your department or your organization, I'm going to plug one of the books, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. So critical, because if you don't have trust as a foundation, then people fear conflicting, fear having difficult conversations. There's lack of commitment, there's avoidance of accountability, lack of results, and it really is, it's an amazing book by Patrick Lencioni, and I definitely recommend that if that's something that maybe you struggle with in large institutions, small institutions, as it relates to trust and having those silos. If you can kind of rebuild that from a management and a leadership team, that trickles into the employees, through the departments, as well as obviously the job overall. And then it can break down pillars if trust is not there as a foundation. And as far as our commitment to unified educational strategies, I can't again reiterate this enough. It's so important to grow leaders together as one unit, not pitting leaders against each other from interdepartmental. One unit, safe environment. You should be fostering an environment of collaboration, strong trust, strong relationships, strong commitment, and everyone's in it together. And so there is no, admissions versus financial aid versus marketing versus a call center versus anybody. If every leader feels that they can truly collaborate, they trust each other, they have strong relationships and commitment, again, your organization, your company can truly break down a lot of those silos. One of the references in the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team is prioritizing and supporting your first team of leaders, which are the leaders at your level, so that you guys can break down those silos. It starts there. And if we can do that overall, industry-wide, I think it definitely will kind of come full circle for many organizations and institutions. It helps us, and it will help us to evolve, drive change, enhance overall student engagement overall, which obviously improves the student experience overall from start all the way through graduation and even beyond as alumni, really being in lock sync, but starts with that trust. Rachel?
Wonderful to have communication, but it's even more important to have purposeful communication. When we're talking to our students, it's so easy to spam them and continue to send notices, whether it's over text, email, phone calls. What happens is they become blind, same as we do when people start marketing to us. So we need to make sure that the messages that we're conveying forwards really do have purpose. And it's important to collaborate with your other offices. This is where, especially in an enrollment management cycle, when we're looking at the beginning portion with admissions and financial aid, to have a communications plan. Because if admissions has one plan and financial aid has another, and you're not collaborating on when you're sending out those notifications, you might be sending them out at the same time. The student can get 20 messages in a week from all the different offices. And you know what they do? And I say this as someone who has a college-age daughter, they ignore them all because they don't know there's any importance or purpose in any of these messages. Collaboration is so important, as is a communications calendar. Work together. These are dates admissions will be sending out information. Excellent. Now let's integrate in their financial aid. What are the cadence of reminders going to go out? Let's let our admissions people know that we're going to be sending out reminders about missing documents on specific dates, so that if they're speaking to the students and they say, hey, I just got this letter, they'll say, oh, you must be missing something. You know what? Let me get in touch with Stacy, your financial aid counselor, and we're going to make sure that gets taken care of today. We've now resolved it. We've known what was going on, and we had collaborative communication, and there was a purpose to everything we were doing. Techniques are important. Make sure that whatever you're doing and how you're communicating contributes to a student's journey. I know here at ECM, our Student Experience Center works very hard to integrate into the culture of an institution. So every time they're having communication, it's purposeful and it sounds exactly the same as if they're speaking to the students from the campus. I also think it's important to use technology to stay connected. My daughter loves to tell me that email is a grandma's form of communication. I don't tell our mother sends thousands of emails a day. We'll just move away from that. But we have to speak to students where they are, which might be texting, remote meetings over Zoom and Teams. We have to stop looking at education as we're sending an email, we're done. There are so many different ways to connect with our students now, whether it's over social media, all the platforms that are out there. Just make sure you're communicating in their style. And with that, I also say, look at what your population is. Are you working with adult students or freshmen coming right out of high school? Your communication, your verbiage, and your techniques need to be different for those different populations because they're going to respond differently. I personally love Teams or Zoom. ECM is a 100% remote company, as is our sister company, FA Solutions. We have well over 100 employees who work completely segregated from each other. The most amazing message I ever had from one of my team members was, I've never met you, but I never feel alone. They sit in an office by themselves all day, but they never feel alone because we're on Teams. We're talking to our schools. We're on video calls, phone calls, messaging with each other because we use technology to create connections. Vanessa, our beautiful moderator, and I have met once. We live completely different portions of this country, yet I am blessed to call her one of my friends. It is what technology can do. It can bridge communications. And when we're looking at that, it can do it within our offices as well. It used to be you had to take this piece of paper and walk down the hallway and find the person and knock on their door. Now you can just see a Teams message, be at your desk and start communicating and have a conversation. It's a wonderful way to start breaking down silos and creating relationships with people. It no longer needs to be scheduled. It now can be more instantaneous by using the technology we already have at our hands and our fingertips. And we can do the same thing with our students. I love this quote, so I had to add it in. Tech gives the quietest student a voice. We all know there are students that are never going to come in and see us. They're never, ever going to come in. They're sitting at home. It's who they are organically. But having technology gives us the ability to say in that enrollment cycle, hey, let's jump on a Teams call. You know what? They can get it on their phone. They don't have to be in front of a computer, and you're seeing each other. Maybe they're an adult student and they have young children and they just can't schedule to come in. We can use every different form of technology to communicate with our students and still create human interactions. Look at this. We have a group of people all discussing enrollment management. All of us are geo-separated, none of us together. Many of these people have never even met each other, yet technology has binded us through our common goals in enrollment management. Let's do the exact same thing with our students.
So Rachel, you covered this seamlessly on the past couple of slides, but I just
Yeah.
want to reiterate it specifically for those who are client student facing, right? So I like to say, read the room, know who you're speaking with. So because I'm comfortable picking up a phone and dialing, and I'm comfortable having a conversation for 5 or 10 minutes on the phone, doesn't mean our prospective students are. So meet them where they're at. When coming up with game plans internally, like admissions and financial aid and student services, how are we going to work with students? Don't think about what's most comfortable for Jen, Rachel, and I. What do the students? And look, who are you working with? Are you talking with recent high school grads? They are glued to their electronics. They are messaging, they are texting, they're doing that. They don't pick up a phone. Or is it someone who's used to conversing with email? I think when I'm doing admissions trainings, I really try to share with people who were like, no, I have to pick up the phone and dial to build rapport. You don't anymore. Think about yourself. You can book a doctor's appointment. You can talk to your doctor. You can schedule to have someone come and fix your furnace. All of this via an app or via text messaging. So why would we be any different? And just really looking at tailoring your message to that specific student. We talk a lot about, do you need parent support? Get them involved early on. You know, if they are a decision maker, whether it's a spouse or it's a parent, invite them in for the campus interview or the campus tour so they can see what's going on. Great conversation, everybody. I think it went amazing. I even learned a lot, and we've done run through. So excited for questions and answers.
Right. Well, why don't I read the first one that we received? The integrated enrollment management approach is essential. However, the issue is, how do we break down the silos, in particular in large institutions? Where do we start?
I could,
I have,
I
you
was gonna
go
say,
first then.
I can speak a little bit to that. I just from my experience, it 100% starts at the top with leadership, with us trying to make sure everybody sees and feels the entire picture. And again, it really goes back to that trust. If I'm not aligned with my peers and leaders in other departments, you know, on the academic side and the other departments overall, then that's not going to filter into my team as it relates to the director of financial aid or the director of admissions. Same thing, like kind of filtering down from my umbrella, trying to foster that community of trust, psychological safety. Nobody's on their little power hungry trip or anything like that. If we can kind of start that at the top, it 100% filters all the way down to the departments, to the people, and the students start to feel the entire shift moving through the enrollment cycle, moving through the academic cycle, moving through the entire life cycle overall. And so I go back to that kind of trust piece and having strong leaders that to try to forge forward with that.
In the front end, you know, specifically marketing, admissions, and financial aid, that should be a group effort, meaning you celebrate your successes together, you come in and chat about what's going on in each of the departments. So it feels like a group, because I think a lot of times when we schedule meetings with just one specific department, then everyone else doesn't know what's going on. So that creates divisiveness right there.
Mhm. I would also say it's communications and finding ways to come together. At some of the universities that I've had the honor to have leadership roles in, we had 10 financial aid offices. And I'm not even going to say how many admissions offices we had based on the locations. And we decided to use things such as technology and communications to come together. Myself and other members of the enrollment management team said, what information can we collaboratively share to break down the silos between admissions and financial aid? Can we share what documents someone is missing? Can we share that we were trying to get in touch with them? What is information that we're permitted to share between our offices to break down those silos and also assist us with connecting with students? Then we also started to have collaborative systems where this person worked with that person. So you always had a human to speak to, whether you were asking a question, a policy question, can I, how does this work? What happens with these students? And it started with us, as Diana said, in leadership, saying, how do we break this down? And then from there, we started having lunch and learns and trainings together and really started creating human connection between the people. At larger institutions, it is very difficult at times because you can be behemoths of organizations. In a way, you're kind of corporate without even being corporate. And it takes effort, work, and your leadership has to have buy-in to it and also allow you to start to create relationships with other people on those teams, because at the end of the day, we're all just people.
If I may add as well, just through my directorships and leaderships in these past 20 plus years, I find that it's super important to notate students' accounts. Where are they in the process? So that any stakeholder that tries to service that student can pick up where you left off or has an idea of what the scenario or situation is. Again, it's breaking down those silos and having room for other areas to help educate what is still outstanding for students. It's customer service. That's, my staff knows me as that's my number one language, or my first language is customer service.
I love that. All right, our next question. Hi,
I'll
folks.
chime in. I want to say
Oh,
one thing,
please.
Rachel.
No, please.
You know, even in a recent meeting that I was in, we were talking about how financial aid and admissions have different roles within our CRM. And we came to realize that financial aid doesn't have automatic cadences as admissions does. So if someone, has not been contacted within so many days or misses an appointment, there's a cadence that comes right in based on those statuses. So I think it is just going back to these basic things we're talking about. If we're in silos, starting at the top, how do we ever know the opportunities that we have to leverage?
Well said. All right. Back to question number 2. Hi, folks. If I bought a lawnmower knowing there is a 2/3 chance that the lawnmower is a lemon, I'm not buying. If grad rates only have a 33 grad rate, this seems to be the core issue. Window and door towards a 33% success rate while saddled with a crappy debt. Well, there's a lot to take in from that question. I could start with the crappy debt portion and then I'll hand off the lawnmower to somebody else. In financial aid, there's a lot of times debt. And that's a reality to education across this country. It's in the media, it's in headlines, it's all over. And that's why it's so important for us to talk to students from day one about repayment terms and smart borrowing, and really ensure that we're educating them on financial matters throughout the entire course of their education. Financial aid is not just a letter that you sign, it's a life agreement if you are borrowing, that it might be 30 years that you are still paying off. Discussing the field that you're going in and whether or not that will have an impact on your repayment terms. That is why enrollment management does not end at the admissions. It goes on until working with your alumni. And yes, all debt is crappy, but there's ways to make it better because at the end you have a degree and you have higher earning potentials and you have an education. So I'm going to stick by that and turn over the lawnmower and outcome to somebody else, which might be Frank in marketing. Oh, I think we are having audio issues with you.
And I can try to
Thank
stop
you.
while he's trying to fix it. Oh, go ahead, Frank.
Nope.
Nope.
All you, Diana.
I'll just take a stab at it real quick. Again, I feel like it still goes all the way back to the communication piece. If there are grad rate issues or placement issues or retention issues, having that open dialogue and open communication with, okay, what can we do better or what can we do different? Maybe there's something in the enrollment process or in the admissions process that we need to make sure that we better qualify students so that they can retain. Maybe there are certain things that are happening either inside the program or the class or the whatever that the leadership and the academic side is also kind of working collectively together to kind of improve those overall grad rates. I don't think it's pointing fingers at one area or the other, because I think it can kind of go full circle with every department can improve in certain areas if students aren't experiencing necessarily the education that they anticipated purchasing or buying or investing in. So again, if as a leadership team, you can collectively come together and start to kind of peel back the onion and start to get to the root cause. Maybe there's some shifts you got to make with admissions. Maybe there's some shifts you got to make with, the class or the program. Maybe there's just different shifts overall, but collectively we want to make sure that we make it an equitable investment for students and what they're trying to achieve overall. But it's definitely a joint effort, and it's not pointing fingers at any department whatsoever, I think.
That was an excellent answer. All right. Does anyone else have anything to add? If not, I'm going to move to question number 3. All right. I think we're good. Question 3. I've always promoted schools should offer a risk reversal. Funny how no one runs on that idea. Thought. Not sure what they mean by risk reversal.
I think some schools do a risk reversal. If I can just read into that in terms of you get to try it out for a little bit, if that's what we're talking about. So I think some of the risk reversal is back to what Diana said. Are we doing diligence in helping the student understand their challenges, their needs, their support system, and where choosing a school where they feel best equipped to graduate, right? So helping students understand the cheapest school may not be where you graduate. What has prevented you from graduating before? So I think there's a lot of risk reversal approaches that we can take. And that's a really big topic. These are great questions, but I know for the sake of time, we're probably going to need to wrap it up. So thanks for letting me chime in there.
I know that we have gone over. Somebody asked if we can just answer their quick question, so I'll throw it out really fast before we end. What do you do when there's so much pushback about financial aid and rules, and we are seen as the bad guys for reducing a student's aid later or due to large departmental awards? I think Stacy and I can definitely take that one. A lot of times in financial aid, we're looked at as the bad guys, but we really are not. We have to follow federal regulations, and ensuring that we follow them has a direct impact on the entire institution. And it's really about communication and ensuring that the students understand. And also, if there's other constituents, sharing the information that you're permitted to do so with them. Stacy, would you like to elaborate?
I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. Again, I think that's where it just comes down to communication and educating, right? So if a student's awards are reduced as a result of a verification in our world, explain that straight to the student and to the other stakeholders that are involved, and give the student the options of what's available to assist with covering that gap, whether it's an interest-free payment plan that the college or university offers, an alternative loan, something that can help cover that difference.
Okay, and now I'm going to turn it over to Vanessa.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. I hope you got a lot out of the webinar today. This is our contact information because I am so sure you still have burning questions that you want to ask and want to get answered. Please send those questions to us. Know that this webinar will be coming out to you. We are so sorry we weren't able to answer all of the questions that were presented to us today, but we'll figure out a way to get some answers out to those of you that did attend. With that, I want to say thank you very much again for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of your afternoon. Bye-bye.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.